Chapter 1, The Living World. How wonderful is the living world? The wide range of living types is amazing. The extraordinary habitats in which we find living organisms, be it cold mountains, deciduous forests, oceans, freshwater lakes, deserts, or hot springs, leaves us speechless. The beauty of galloping horse, of the migrating birds, the valley of flowers, or the attacking shark evokes awe and the deep sense of wonder. The ecological conflict and cooperation among the members of population and among the populations of a community, or even the molecular traffic inside a cell, makes us deeply reflect on the what indeed is life. This question has two implicit questions within it. The first is a technical one, and six answer to the what is living is opposed to the non-living, and the other is the philosophical one, and six answer to the purpose of the life is. As a scientist, we shall not attempt answering second question. We will try to reflect on the what is living. 1.1, what is living? When we try to define living, we conventionally look for a distinctive characteristics exhibited by living organisms: growth, reproduction, ability to sense environment and mount a suitable response come to our mind immediately as a unique feature of a living organisms. One can add a few more features like metabolism, ability to self-replicate, self-organize, interact, and emergence to the list. Let us try to understand each of these. All, all living organisms grow, increase in mass, and increase in number of the individuals are the twin characteristics of growth. A multicellular organism grows by cell division. In plants, this growth by cell division occurs continuously throughout their lifespan. In animals, this growth is seen only up to the certain age. However, cell division occurs in a certain tissues to replace lost cells. Unicellular organisms grow by cell division. One can easily observe this in vitro cultures by simply counting the number of cells under the microscope. In majority of the higher animals and plants, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. One must remember that the increase in body mass is considered as a growth. Non-living objects also grow if we take increase in body mass as a criterion for growth. Mountains, boulders, and sand mounds do grow. However, this kind of growth exhibited by non-living objects in a accumulation of the material of the surface. In living organisms, growth is from inside. Growth therefore cannot be taken as a defining property of the living organisms. Conditions under which it can be observed in all living organisms have to be explained, and that then we understand that it is the characteristic of the living organisms. A dead organism does not grow. Reproduction, likewise, is a characteristic of the living organisms. In multicellular organisms, reproduction refers to the production of progeny possessing features more or less similar to those of the parents. Invariably and implicitly, we refer to sexual reproduction. Organisms reproduce by asexual means also. Fungi multiply and spread easily due to millions of asexual spores they produce. In lower organisms like yeast and hydra, we observe budding. In planaria, means flatworms, we observe the true regeneration, that is, a fragmented organism regenerates the lost part of the body and it becomes a new organism. The fungi, the filamentous algae, the protonema of the mosses, all easily multiply by the fragmentation. When it comes to unicellular organisms like bacteria, unicellular algae, or amoeba, reproduction is synonymous with the growth, that is, increase in the number of cells. We have already defined growth as a equivalent to the increase in cell number or mass. Hence, we notice that the single-celled organisms, we are not very clear about the usage of these two terms, growth and reproduction. Further, there are many organisms which do not reproduce, means mules, sterile, worker bees, infertile human couples, etc. Hence, reproduction is also not be an all-inclusive defining characteristic of the living organisms. Of course, no non-living object is capable of reproducing or replicating by itself. Another characteristic of a life is a metabolism. All living organisms are made up of chemicals. These chemicals, small and big, belonging to the various classes, sizes, functions, etc., are constantly being made and changed into the some other biomolecules. These conversions are chemical reactions or metabolic reactions. There are thousands thousands of metabolic reactions occurring simultaneously inside all living organisms, be they unicellular or multicellular. All plants, animals, fungi, and microbes exhibit metabolism. The sum of total of all the chemical reactions occurring in our body is a metabolism. No non-living object exhibit metabolism. Metabolic reactions can be demonstrated outside the body in a cell-free systems, and isolated metabolic reactions outside the body of an organism performed in a test tube is neither living or nor non-living. Hence, while metabolism is a defining feature of all living organisms without exception, isolated metabolic reactions in vitro are not living things but surely living reactions. Hence, cellular organization of a body is a defining feature of the life forms. Perhaps the most obvious and technically complicated feature of all living organisms is the ability to sense their surroundings or environment and respond to these environmental stimuli, which could be physical, chemical, or biological. We sense our environment through our sense organs. Plants respond to external factors like light, water, temperature, other organisms, pollutant, etc. All organisms from the prokaryotes to the most complex eukaryotes can sense and respond to the environmental cues. Photoperiod affects reproduction in seasonal breeders, both plants and animals. All organisms handle chemical entering their bodies. All organisms therefore are aware of their surroundings. Human being, the only organisms who is aware of himself, that is, has self-consciousness. Consciousness therefore becomes the defining property of the living organism. When it comes to the human beings, it is all the more difficult to define the living state. We observe patients lying in a coma in hospitals virtually supported by machines which replace hearts and lungs. The patient is otherwise brain dead. The patient has no self consciousness. Are such patients who never come back to normal life, living or non living? In a higher classes, you will come to know that all living phenomena are due to underlying interactions. Properties of tissues are not present in the constituent cells but arise as a result of interactions among the constituent cells. Similarly, properties of the cellular organelles are not present in the molecular constituents of the organelle but arise as a result of interactions among the molecular components of the comprising the organelle. These interactions result in emergent properties at a higher level of organization. This phenomenon is true in a hierarchy of organizational complexity at all levels. Therefore, we can say that the living organisms are self-replicating, evolving, and self-regulating interactive systems capable of responding to the external stimuli. Biology is the story of life of Earth. Biology is the story of evolution of living organisms on earth. All living organisms, present, past, and future, are linked to one another by the sharing of the common genetic material, but to varying degrees. 1.2 Diversity in the living world. If you to look around, you will see a large variety of living organisms, be it potted plants, insects, birds, your pets, or other animals and plants. There are also several organisms that you cannot see with your naked eye, but they are all around you. If you were to increase the area that you make observations in, the range and variety of organisms that you see will increase. Obviously, if you were to visit dense forest, you would probably see a much greater number and kinds of living organisms in it. Each different kind of plant, animal, and organism that you see represents the species. The number of species that are known and described range between 1.7 to 1.8 million. This refers to the biodiversity or the number of types of organisms present on earth. We should remember here that as we explore new areas and even old ones, new organisms are continuously being identified. As stated earlier, there are millions of plants and animals in the world. We know the plants and animals in our own area by their local names. These local names would vary from place to place, even within country. Probably you would recognize the confusion that would be created if we did not find ways, that means to talk to each other to refer to the organisms we are talking about. Hence, there is a need to standardize the naming of living organisms such that a particular organism is known by a same name all over the world. This process is called nomenclature. Obviously, nomenclature or the naming is only possible when the organism is described correctly and we know to what organism the name is attached to. The identification. In order to facilitate the study, number of scientists have established procedure to assign a scientific name to each known organism. This is acceptable to biologists all over the world. For plants, scientific names are based on agreed principles and criteria which are provided in International Code for Botanical Nomenclature ICBN. You may ask, how are the animals named? Animals taxonomists have evolved International Code of Zoological Nomenclature ICZN. The scientific names ensure that each organism has only one name. Description of the any organism should enable the people means in a part of the world to arrive the same name. They also ensure that such a name has not been used for any other known organisms. Biologists follow universally accepted principles to provide scientific names to the known organisms. Each name has two components, the generic name and the specific epithet. This system of providing a name with the two components is called binomial nomenclature. This naming system given by Carlos Linnaeus in being practiced by biologists all over the world. This naming system using a two-word format was found convenient. Let us take an example of a mango to understand the way of providing scientific names better. The scientific name of a mango is written as Mangifera indica. Let us see how it is the binomial name. In the name Mangifera represent a genus while indica is a particular species or a specific epithet. Other universal rules of a nomenclature are as follows. First, biological names are generally in Latin and written in italics. They are Latinized or derived from the Latin irrespective of their origin. Second, the first word in a biological name represents the genus while the second component denotes the specific epithet. Third, both the words in a biological name, when handwritten, are separately underlined or printed in italics to indicate their Latin origin. 4. The first word is denoting the genus starts with the capital letter while the specific epithet starts with the small letter. It can be illustrated with the example of Mangifera indica. Name of the author appears after the specific epithet, that is at the end of the biological name, and is written in abbreviated form. Example Mangifera indica Linn. It indicates that this species was first described by Linnaeus. Since it is nearly impossible to study all the living organisms, it is necessary to devise some means to make this possible. This process is classification. Classification is the process by which anything is grouped into convenient categories based on some easily observable characters. For example, we easily recognize groups such as plants or animals or dogs, cats or insects. The moment we use any of these terms, we associate a certain characters with the organisms in that group. What image do you see when you think of a dog? Obviously, each one of us will see dogs and not cats. Now, if we were to think the Alsatians, we know what we are talking about. Similarly, suppose to we were to say mammals, you would of course think of animals with external ears and body hair. Likewise, in plants, if we were try to talk wheat, the picture in which the minds will be come of wheat plants, not a rice or any other plant. Hence, all these dogs, cats, mammals, wheat, rice, plants, animals, etc. are convenient to categorize. We use the study organisms. The scientific term for the categories is a taxa. Here, you must recognize the taxa can indicate the categories at a very different levels. Plants also form a taxa. Wheat is also taxa. Similarly, animals, mammals, dogs are all taxa. But you know that the dog is a mammal and mammals are animals. Therefore, animals, mammals and dogs represent taxa at a different levels. Hence, based on characteristics, all living organisms can be classified into different taxa. This process of classification is taxonomy. External and internal structure, along with the structure of cell development process and ecological information of organisms, are essential and form the basis of modern taxonomic studies. Hence, characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature are the processes that are basic to taxonomy. Taxonomy is not something new. Human beings have always been interested in knowing more and more about the various kinds of organisms, particularly with the reference to their own use. In early days, humans being needed to find sources for their basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter. Hence, the earliest classification were based on the uses of the various organisms. Human beings were since long not only interested in the knowing more about the different kinds of organisms and their diversities, but also the relationships among them. This branch of study was referred to as systematics. The word systematic is derived from the Latin word systema, which means the systematic arrangement of organisms. Linnaeus used Systema Naturae as the title of his publication. The scope of systematic was later enlarged to include identification, nomenclature, and classification system takes into account evolutionary relationship between organisms. 1.3 Taxonomic categories. Classification is not a single step process but involves hierarchy of the steps in which each step is represent a rank or a category. Since the category is the part of the overall taxonomic arrangement, it is called the taxonomic category, and all the categories together constitute the taxonomic hierarchy. Each category, referred to as a unit of classification, in fact represents a rank and commonly termed as a taxon. Taxonomic categories and hierarchy can be illustrated by an example. Insects represent a group of organisms sharing common features like three pairs of jointed legs. It means the insects are recognizable concrete objects which can be classified and thus were given a rank or a category. Can you name other such group of organisms? Remember, group represents category. Category further denotes rank. Each rank or a taxon, in fact, represents a unit of classification. These taxonomic groups, categories, are distinct biological entities and not merely morphological aggregates. Taxonomical studies of all known organisms have led to the development of a common categories such as kingdom, phylum, or division. For plants, class, order, family, genus, and species. All organisms, including those in the plant and animal kingdoms, have species as the lowest category. Now, the question you may ask is how to place an organism in various categories. The basic requirement is the knowledge of characters of the individual or the group of organisms. This helps in the identifying similarities and dissimilarities among the individuals of the same kind of the organisms as well as of the other kinds of the organisms. 1.3.1 Species. Taxonomic studies consider a group of individual organisms of fundamental similarities as a species. One should be able to distinguish one species from the other closely related species based on the distinct morphological differences. Let us consider Mangifera indica, Solanum tuberosum means potato, and Panthera leo means lion. All the three names indica, tuberosum, and leo represent the specific epithets, while the first words Mangifera, Solanum, and Panthera are genera and represents the another higher level of the taxon or a category. Each genus may have one or more than one specific epithets representing different organisms but having morphological similarities. For example, Panthera has the other specific epithet called tigris, and Solanum includes the species like nigrum and melongena. Human beings belong to the species Sapiens, which is grouped in a genus Homo. The scientific name, thus, for human being is written as a Homo sapiens. 1.3.2 Genus. Genus comprises a group of related species which has more characters in more common in comparison to the species of the other genera. We can say that genera are aggregates of closely related species. For example, potato, brinjal, and are two different species but both belong to the genus Solanum. Lion, means Panthera leo, leopard means Panthera pardus, and tiger means Panthera tigris, with several common features, are all species of the genus Panthera. These genus differ from the other genus like Felis, which includes cats. 1.3.3 Family. The next category, family, has a group of related genera with a still less number of similarities as compared to the genus or species. Families are characterized by the on their basis of the both vegetative and reproductive features of the plant species. Among the plant, for example, three different genera, Solanum, Petunia, and Datura, are placed in a family Solanaceae. Among animals, for example, genus Panthera, comprising lion, tiger, leopard, is put along with the genus Felis, means cats, in the family of Felidae. Similarly, if you observe the features of a cat and a dog, you will find some similarities and some differences as well. They separated into two different families, Felidae and Canidae, respectively. 1.3.4 Order. You have seen earlier that the categories like species, genus, and families are based on a number of similar characters. Generally, order and the other higher taxonomic categories are identified based on aggregates of characters. Order, being a higher category, is the assemblage of families which exhibit a few similar characters. The similar characters are less in number as compared to the different genera included in a family. Plant families like Convolvulaceae, Solanaceae are included in the order Polymoniales, mainly based on a floral characters. The animal order Carnivora includes the families like Felidae and Canidae. 1.3.5 Class. This category includes the related orders. For example, order Primata, comprising monkey, gorilla, and gibbon, is placed in a class Mammalia along with the order Carnivora that includes the animals like tiger, cat, and dog. Class Animalia has two other orders also. 1.3.6 Phylum. Classes comprising the animals like fishes, amphibians, reptiles, aves, along with the mammals, constitute the next higher category called phylum. All these based on a common features like presence of notochord and dorsal hollow neural system are included in the phylum Chordata. In case of plants, classes with a few similar characters are assigned to higher category called division. 1.3.7 Kingdom. All the animals belonging to the various phyla are assigned to the highest category called kingdom Animalia in classification system of animals. The kingdom Plantae, on the other hand, is distinct and comprises all the plants from the various divisions. Henceforth, we will refer to these two groups as animal and plant kingdom. The taxonomic categories from species to kingdom have been shown in the ascending order, starting with the species in figure 1.1. These are broad categories. However, taxonomists have also developed such subcategories in the hierarchy to facilitate more sound and scientific placement of various taxa. Look at the hierarchy in the figure 1.1. Can you recall the basis of arrangement? Say, for example, as we go higher from the species to kingdom, the number of common characteristics goes on decreasing. Lower the taxa, more the more are the characteristics that the number within the taxon here share. Higher the category, greater is the difficulty of the determining the relationship of the other taxa at the same level. Hence, the problem of a classification becomes more complex. Table 1.1 indicates the taxonomic categories to which some common organisms like housefly, man, mango, and wheat belong. 1.4 Taxonomical aids. Taxonomic studies of various species of plants, animals, and other organisms are useful in agriculture, forestry, industry, and in general in the knowing of our bioresources and their diversity. These studies would require correct classification and identification of organisms. Identification of organisms require intensive laboratory and field studies. The collection of actual specimens of the plants and animal species is essential and is their prime source of taxonomic studies. These are also fundamental to studies and essential for the training of in systematics. It is used for the classification of an organism, and information gathered is also stored along with the specimens. The some cases of specimens is preserved for future studies. Biologists have established certain procedures and techniques to store and preserve the information as well as the specimens. Some of these are explained to help you understanding the usage of these aids. 1.4.1 Herbarium. Herbarium is the storehouse of the collected plant specimens that are dried, pressed, and preserved on sheets. Further, these sheets are arranged according to the universally accepted system of classification. These specimens, along with their description or on herbarium sheets, become storehouse of or the repository for future use. Figure 1.2. The herbarium sheets also carry a level of providing information about the date and place of the collection, English, local and botanical names, family, collectors' names, etc. Herbaria also serve as a quick referral system to the in the taxonomical studies. 1.4.2 Botanical gardens. The specialized gardens have collections of the living plants of the reference. Plant species in these gardens are grown for identification purposes, and each plant is labeled indicating its botanical or scientific name and its family. The famous botanical garden are in Kew, England, Indian Botanical Garden, Howrah, India, and in National Botanical Research Institute, Lucknow, India. 1.4.3 Museum. Biological museums are generally set up in the educational institutes such as schools and colleges. Museums have collections of preserved plant and animals specimens for the study and reference. Specimens are preserved in the containers or jars in preservative solutions. Plants and animal specimens may also be preserved as a dry specimens. In insects are preserved in insect boxes after collecting, killing, and pinning. Larger animals like birds and mammals are usually stuffed and preserved. Museums often have collections of skeletons of animals too. 1.4.4 Zoological parks. There are the places where wild animals are kept in protected environments under the human care and which enable us to learn about their food habitats and behavior. All animals in a zoo are provided as far as possible the conditions similar to their natural habitats. Children love visiting these parks, commonly called zoos. Figure 1.3. 1.4.5 Key. Key is another taxonomical aid used for the identification of plants and animals based on similarities and dissimilarities. The keys are based on contrasting characters, generally in a pair called couplet. It represents the choice made between two opposite options. This results in acceptance of the only one and rejection of the other. Each statement in the key is called a lead. Separate taxonomic keys are required for the each taxonomic category such as family, genus, and species. For the identification purposes, keys are generally analytical in nature. Flora, manuals, monographs, and the catalogs are some other means of recording descriptions. They also help in a correct in identification. Flora contains the actual account of the habitat and distribution of plants of a given area. This provides the index to the plant species found in a particular area. Manuals are useful in providing information for the identification of names of a species found in an area. Monographs contain the information of any one taxon. Summary. The living world is rich in variety. Millions of plants and animals have been identified and described, but a large number of still remains unknown. The very range of organisms in terms of size, color, habitat, physiological and morphological features makes us seek the defining characteristic of the organisms. In order to facilitate the study of kinds and diversity of the organisms, biologists have evolved a certain rules and principles for identification, nomenclature, and classification of the organisms. The branch of knowledge dealing with these aspects is referred to as taxonomy. The taxonomy studies of a various species of plants and animals are useful in agriculture, forestry, industry, and in general for knowing our bioresources and their diversity. The basics of the taxonomy, like identification, naming, and classification of the organisms, are universally evolved under international codes based on the resemblance and distinct differences. Each organism identified and assigned a correct scientific or biological name comprising two words as per the binomial system of nomenclature. An organism represents or occupies a place or a position in the system or a classification. There are many categories or ranks and are generally referred to as the taxonomic categories or taxa. All the categories constitute a taxonomic hierarchy. Taxonomists have developed a variety of taxonomical aids to facilitate identification, naming, and classification of organisms. These studies are carried out from the actual specimens which are collected from the field and preserved as a referral in the form of herbaria, museums, in a botanical gardens, and zoological parks. It requires a special techniques for a collection and preservation of the specimens in herbaria and museums. Live specimens, on the other hand, plants and animals, are found in the botanical gardens or zoological parks. Taxonomists also prepare a disseminate information through manuals and monographs for a further taxonomic studies. Taxonomic keys are the tools that help in identification and based on a characteristics. Thank you.